Welcome to today's news wrap up. Let's dive right into the top stories making headlines today. Christine Grady, a bioethicist at NIH and wife of Anthony Fauci, was recently laid off as part of a restructuring effort by the Department of Health and Human Services. The changes aim to consolidate administrative functions and address inefficiencies in the health system. Critics have pointed out potential conflicts of interest during her tenure, particularly regarding ethical oversight of research tied to the Wuhan lab leak controversy. So there we go. The plot thickens. The person that's supposed to be looking out for our best interests when it comes to these jabs and stuff happens to be Anthony Fauci's wife, right? You can't make this stuff up. But other NIH officials close to Fauci, including Clifford Lane and Emily Erbelding, were also dismissed. These moves reflect broader efforts to overhaul the agency's operations and improve transparency in decision making. Amazon has made a bid to acquire TikTok as the app faces a deadline to divest from its Chinese ownership or risk being banned in the U.S. According to sources, Amazon submitted its offer to Vice President J.D. Vance and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, but many involved in the discussions are not taking the bid seriously. Other potential buyers include Project Liberty, led by billionaire Frank McCourt, and investor Kevin O'Leary. While President Trump extended the deadline for divestment, TikTok has resisted selling, partly due to Chinese government opposition. A proposed deal would create a new company with majority U.S. ownership, but concerns remain about liability provisions in the legislation banning foreign-owned apps. TikTok's valuation under different scenarios ranges from $20 billion to $40 billion, depending on whether its original source code remains part of the deal. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, along with two other nonprofits, is facing scrutiny over claims of racial discrimination in its scholarship and career advancement programs. The American Alliance for Equal Rights has reported the organization to the IRS, arguing that their exclusion of white applicants violates federal law and should result in the revocation of their tax-exempt status. Edward Bloom, AAER's president, emphasized that nonprofits benefiting from tax exemptions must not engage in race-based discrimination. That's exactly what it is. The Gates Scholarship specifically limits eligibility to African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, and Native American students, raising concerns about fairness in funding distribution. The LeGrant Foundation and Creative Capital are also accused of similar practices, restricting access to professional development and artistic grants based on race. Critics argue that such policies contradict principles of equal opportunity and should not be supported by taxpayer subsidies. Elon Musk suggested at a Wisconsin town hall that his Department of Government Efficiency project may investigate financial dealings of certain members of Congress. I am loving this. We all know how they come into Congress broke, but they end up becoming millionaires. How does this happen? How do they become millionaires seemingly overnight? Remember so-called socialist Bernie Sanders? He's a millionaire. I'm sure they try to say it's because of the books he sold. Be for real. So he's a millionaire. You got Elizabeth Warren, who came in talking about the evil millionaires, and then she became a millionaire. How did they acquire their millions? But he explained that taxpayer money often moves through government agencies and NGOs before returning to the U.S., potentially benefiting influential politicians. Musk emphasized that corruption doesn't involve direct payments, but rather a complex network of financial transactions. I mean, look no further than the Hunter Biden laptop. We know that that's how the Bidens made their money, is through, they would create these companies and things like that and move money through these companies. So you can't trace it back to them. And these so-called NGOs, people create these NGOs to get tax money, and it's a grift. The whole thing is a grift. But the discussion arose as attendees questioned whether Doge had uncovered ties between USAID funds and politicians like Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, and Chuck Schumer. Musk remarks highlight his ongoing effort to trace unusual wealth accumulation among lawmakers. His initiative aims to bring greater transparency to government spending and accountability to Washington. The Trump administration has canceled 2 climate grants previously awarded to the Rocky Mountain Institute, a think tank known for advocating strict gas stove regulations and collaborating with the Chinese government. Of course, who else would be behind shutting down our gas stoves than the Chinese government? One grant worth $5.3 million was meant to fund a green energy retrofit for a building in Cambridge, Massachusetts, while another $1.5 million grant supported research on electric vehicle car share programs. The Department of Energy stated that these projects no longer align with the agency's priorities and did not advance policy goals. The decision is part of a broader effort under Energy Secretary Chris Wright to roll back Biden-era spending and review green energy initiatives. The Environmental Protection Agency has already rescinded $22 billion in climate-related grants due to financial mismanagement and oversight failures. Critics argue that the Rocky Mountain Institute has promoted anti-fossil fuel policies that raise energy costs, while supporters warn that ending such funding could hinder clean energy progress. I don't believe that. People will come up with innovation. We don't need government putting their nose in it. A federal judge dismissed the corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams and barred the Department of Justice from refiling charges. Why would they want to refile charges? I mean, this is not what Trump was planning on doing in the first place. But Judge Dale Ho ruled that allowing the DOJ to refile would suggest Adams' legal status was tied to his ability to enforce the administration's immigration policies. Oh, there we have it. Prosecutors initially sought dismissal without prejudice, which would have permitted future charges based on the same evidence. But Ho rejected this request. Adams, who is campaigning for re-election, argued that the Biden administration targeted him in retaliation for his criticisms of the migration crisis response. The DOJ had previously directed prosecutors to drop the case, citing concerns that the investigation interfered with Adams' ability to address key policy issues like crime and immigration. The decision prevents the mayor from facing bribery, wire fraud, and illegal campaign contribution charges. California has allocated nearly $18 million in taxpayer funds to the Tide Center since Governor Gavin Newsom took office in 2019. Didn't I tell you these NGOs are a grift? You create these NGOs, you create something like the Tide Center, and you just collect taxpayer money. And you only give less than 1% to the cause that you supposedly are working towards, or you use it for propaganda like George Soros does. But the organization acts as a financial middleman, distributing funds to various progressive groups while avoiding strict IRS transparency requirements. So they give it to the Tides Foundation, then the Tides Foundation give it to these leftist groups. And due to this structure, it is unclear which project receives state money, making oversight difficult. While some funds have been traced to initiatives focused on health, equity, and environmental justice, the bulk of the payments remain undisclosed. Newsom has personal ties to the Tides network, raising questions about the financial influence on state policy. Critics argue that taxpayer dollars should not support a system with limited transparency, prompting concerns about accountability in government spending. Lastly, A man with deep resentment towards big pharmacies carried out a deadly attack at a Walgreens in Madera, California. Now, this is what happened when, because of the leftist, the progressive, celebrating vigilantes like Luigi. And so now it's a thing to go out there and kill innocent people because they work for these big corporations. This is ridiculous. This is why people like Luigi should have been condemned, but the left refused to condemn things like this. The suspect, 30-year-old Narcisco Gallardo Fernandez, allegedly entered the store late Monday night and fatally shot employee Eric Velasquez before targeting other workers. Scary stuff. Prior to the attack, Fernandez destroyed a security camera, possibly attempting to cover his tracks. The police chief noted that Fernandez did not personally know Velasquez and that the pharmacy section was closed at the time. Fernandez was apprehended in the parking lot while reloading his weapon. Authorities confirm he faces multiple felony charges, including murder, and is scheduled to appear in court. Well, that's all for today's news wrap up. Stay tuned for more updates and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.